Welcome back to the deep dive. And today, we're doing something a little different. We're not cracking open some, massive 300-page report or a dense white paper. Instead, we are staring down what seems like a single, simple data point, a massive success announcement. And from that, we are going to try and extract some pretty profound, almost uncomfortable insights about scale, platform influence, and community dynamics. It's really an investigation into the anatomy of success itself in this digital age.
It really is. And it's a fascinating piece of source material because its brevity is, it's pretty deceptive. It's almost like a corporate haiku that, it encapsulates a decade of strategic decisions and execution. We basically have three crucial elements from what looks like a community thank you, almost a celebratory snippet they've shared with their. First, you've got the staggering sales, 40 million users. Second, there's a specific but also slightly tentative platform. And third, there's this direct and I think very meaningful acknowledgement. So our mission for this whole deep dive is custom tailored for you, the learner, to understand what each of those three words, 40 million Steam community, really implies. What it tells us about the product, its creators, and the digital marketplace they've, pretty much conquered.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Because 40 million, that's not just a big number. It's a cultural marker.
It is.
It's a figure that goes way beyond typical commercial success and enters this realm of major global phenomena, both technologically and socially.
Yeah.
So before we even get into the nuances of where and how it happened, we just need to ground ourselves in what that scale truly represents. A number that big, it demands operational perfection, and it absolutely sets the bar for every competitor in the market.
Right. We have to start there. We have to analyze 40 million purely as a concept of scale, just for a moment, divorced from the product itself. In any industry, I don't care if we're talking software units, consumer goods, even like complex machinery, 40 million is a colossal installed user base. It immediately implies global, profound market penetration. And that's true even if we assume this happened over a very long time. Just think about the sheer volume of individual engagement this represents. That's 40 million unique purchase decisions. That number alone secures a developer's place.
When you really try to put 40 million into context, you're looking at a digital population. It's a user base that, it probably surpasses the population of many medium-sized countries.
Yeah.
Like Canada or maybe Poland.
Right. That's a great comparison.
And that's just a staggering equivalent. So to engage 40 million individual transactions, you have to ask, what kind of product or service is actually required to do that?
Yeah.
Does it demand broad mass market appeal, extremely low barriers to entry? Or could it be achieved through intense, sustained viral growth, but within a highly specialized, very large niche?
And that's such an important distinction to make because the numbers themselves start to blur the line. While a successful niche product can absolutely achieve massive success, a number like 40 million, it strongly suggests genuine mass market. We have to assume it's a product that resonates far beyond a narrow demographic. It has to be capable of attracting casual users alongside those, the dedicated. For a truly niche product, even a large niche, the velocity usually plateaus much. That's because of complexity or, prerequisite knowledge being required. To keep pushing toward 40 million, the product itself must inherently accessible.
But I wonder if that definition of accessible is changed.
Alrighty.
Well, could 40 million perhaps be achieved if the product is incredible or if it's some kind of massive utility? If we look at other products on that 40 million unit scale, they often share characteristics, things like extremely low system requirements, highly optimized networking code, and minimal language barrier. The scale itself dictates the nature of the user experience just as much as the content.
That's a great point.
If the product were difficult to understand, or if it required specialized hardware, or was priced prohibitively, that curve to reach 40 million would just flatten out completely. The transaction itself must be frictionless. And that's another massive technical challenge right there.
That breadth of appeal and that ease of transaction are absolutely linked. They're essential. The scale dictates a level of operational excellence that often goes, completely unappreciated by the end user. Just think about the friction involved in buying something online. The payment gateway fails, the download stalls, the user forgets their password.
Okay. Yeah.
For 40 million people to overcome all that potential friction, the entire purchasing funnel has to be near perfect. And that means your API reliability has to be rock solid, your A/B testing on conversion rates is optimized to the absolute extreme, and payment gateway friction is minimized to a tenth of a second. 40 million transactions means the developer's technical team running the e-commerce backend is just as important as the design team building the product.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other. 40 million failed transactions would represent an apocalyptic revenue loss. So the scale doesn't just imply popularity. It implies a colossal ongoing investment in systems designed specifically for high volume sales velocity, probably over years.
And now we can move to the next point, which is longevity. And here's where it gets really in. Achieving a figure like this suggests consistent sales. It's often indicative of what we call an evergreen product rather than a typical flash-in-the-pan hit.
Right. The one-hit wonder.
Exact. A standard product life cycle follows a pretty predictable bell curve. You get a launch spike, and that's followed by a rapid, to hit 40 million, that decline must either be extremely gradual, a long, shallow slope, or the product has to be repeatedly rejuvenated with significant attractive content updates or expansions, new sales.
Evergreen stat. That implies a specific developer.
It has to.
It means they didn't treat the product as a one-time boxed release. It suggests sustained development, consistent maintenance, and crucially continuous content updates, all to keep the product relevant for years, maybe even a decade or more. These updates drive those subsequent peaks in sales, pulling in new users and prompting older users, who might have bought it years ago, to come back, and critically, to advocate for new purchases among their friends. That advocacy is what keeps the units churning toward that massive 40 million total.
But that introduces a core financial dilemma you sort of touched on. Doesn't that sustained development risk over-investing in a product that might be perceived as, a decade? At what point does the cost of that rejuvenation outweigh the revenue generated by the long? And the answer for a 40 million unit product is that the investment becomes
market insurance. I like that.
The sheer size of the existing user base means that even a small, successful update can generate enormous, predictable revenue spikes that just dwarf the development costs of the update itself. The infrastructure is already built, the brand is established, and the community is ready to.
So the developer is essentially trading the cost of building a new, risky product from scratch.
Right.
For the certainty of investing in an existing proven revenue stream.
Precisely. And that ties directly into the economic reality of this. Connecting the sales volume to the implied financial success is essential. And this is where we have to wade into the weeds of gross versus net revenue. Even if we assume a minimal average selling price, let's say maybe $5 per unit because of frequent deep discounts over the...
Which is probably a safe bet.
Yeah. A conservative estimate, 40 million units still represents $200 million in gross rev. If the average price is higher, say $15, you're looking at $600. This level of revenue is sufficient not only to sustain the initial, but to grow it significantly, to fund continuous development, and potentially to fund entirely new, unrelated projects for years to come, all without external investment.
That level of capital, it just secures the developer's position in the market. It gives them freedom. But let's get specific about the resource allocation. This raises a really important question. What level of infrastructure, customer support, and developer investment must be perpetually supported by the cash flow that comes from 40 million units?
Everything has to scale. Let's just try and break down some of the hidden costs that are guaranteed by... First, server. You need robust infrastructure, global, often replicated across multiple regions, North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, just to handle concurrent usage, updates, and any online. This is a massive, recurring, and probably growing...
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, payment gateways and fraud. Dealing with 40 million transactions means paying significant transaction fees and employing dedicated systems to fight fraud and chargebacks on a global. And third, customer support. If we assume, very conservatively, that only 0.1% of those 40 million require support in a given, still 40,000 inquiries.
40,000
support
every month. That's the equivalent of putting the entire population of a city like Cambridge, Massachusetts through a customer service bottleneck every single month. It's hard to even wrap your head around the stress load that puts on the back-end team. The sheer volume of personnel needed just to handle the inevitable complaints, technical issues, and billing errors.
It absolutely demands a highly scaled multi-language support. It's possibly outsourced, but it's certain. This kind of scale transforms the developer from what creative studio into a full-scale multinational operational. And the 40 million figure guarantees that a high degree of resources are perpetually dedicated to managing, supporting, and improving the product. This isn't just a passion project. It's an economic engine with global operation.
And crucially, this massive revenue stream creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of quality, doesn't it?
It can.
Because the development budget is so massive and continuous, the team can afford to iterate slowly and carefully. They can prioritize quality fixes and deep feature integration over just rushing out half-finished content. The expectation from a 40 million strong community is immense, and the resources they get from those sales allow the developer to meet or exceed that expectation, which in turn generates even more positive word of mouth that feeds the next batch of sales.
Exactly. It's a virtuous cycle. Yeah. Now, let's consider the velocity of these sales. While the source doesn't give us a timeline, did this happen in 2 years or 10?
Right.
Reaching 40 million implies navigating distinct growth phase. You have the initial spike, then the long tail, and then subsequent significant peaks that are driven by major updates, expansions, or those big platform-wide sales events. The average sales rate has to remain high for years.
We can contrast two hypothetical life cycles based on this number. Was it, a slow decades-long build of purely organic word-of-mouth growth where the sales rate was steady but never meteoric? Or was it a rapid, explosive success that quickly captured the cultural zeitgeist and then settled into a sustained high performance?
Right.
The latter requires immediate, massive infrastructure scaling from day one, but the former, the slow build, that requires immense patience and faith in the product's fundamental quality.
Regardless of the initial path, the figure of 40 million demands a powerful, enduring long tail. The initial sales, in the launch window, that usually covers the cost of development and maybe the first year of operation. But the long tail, the consistent sales in years 3, 4, 5, and beyond, that pays for the future. It's the difference between a supernova, which burns incredibly bright and dies quickly, and a stable, high-mass star that just burns for eons.
And to maintain that long tail, you are constantly fighting against network decay.
Mm-hmm.
You have to convince new customers that a product that has been on the market for years is still fresh, relevant, and worth their investment today. A high percentage of that 40 million must come from people discovering the product well after its initial release. Maybe they're drawn in by a friend, a major overhaul, or a deep discount.
And that right there, that is the ultimate transition point from being simply successful to becoming evergreen. It implies a constantly replenishing pool of new customers. It suggests the product's appeal doesn't age, or that the developers have consistently updated it to feel contemporary, through feature parity with newer. This scale fundamentally changes how we view the product's life. It's not a single curve. It's more like a fractal series of overlapping waves, all crashing into that arc.
Okay, so now we shift context. We're moving from the astronomical scale of the number to the specific geography of its success. The huge number, 40 million, is paired with a slightly odd, almost casual clarification. It says, I guess that happened on Steam.
Yeah.
That is not the confident affirmation you often see in major press releases announcing monumental achievement. It sounds almost humble or maybe strategically vague.
What's fascinating here is precisely that uncertainty. I guess that happened on Steam. This casual phrasing is so revealing about market dominance and the developer's internal reality. It suggests that while the 40 million number is hard verified, a monumental milestone they're eager to announce, the exact percentage breakdown by platform might genuinely be a bit fuzzy. Or perhaps it's just irrelevant because one platform so overwhelmingly dominates the total.
Let's explore interpretation A, which points directly to that market dominance. The 40 million might actually be a near total unit count across all platforms the product may exist on. So the publisher is making a reasonable, almost inevitable assumption that the overwhelming majority of those sales, or like 95% or more, happened on the most dominant single platform, Steam. They know the total and they know where the heavy lifting occurred, but they couch it in, I guess, because they aren't citing an exact platform-specific audited figure. This casualness is actually a statement about Steam's gravity.
Interpretation A speaks volumes about platform lock-in. If a developer feels comfortable essentially equating their total global sales with their sales on a single digital distribution platform, it demonstrates a profound, almost total reliance on that ecosystem for their PC market. It shows that Steam isn't just a store. For this product, it was the entire gravitational center of the market. It just sucked in almost all possible sales volume.
Well, let's consider interpretation B. It might be a bit more sympathetic to the complexity of the data. It suggests that their internal tracking might genuinely be complex. Perhaps the product was sold through various sales channels, direct sales from their own website, physical copies, other smaller digital storefronts, maybe some regional partners, and merging all that data into a single clean number for the public release required some aggregation and estimation.
Well, even under interpretation B, because Steam's volume is so overwhelmingly large, it serves as the clear defining reference point for the milestone. They know the magnitude is driven by Steam, even if the last few million might have trickled in from elsewhere. Itself kind of humanizes the metric. It turns a sterile corporate announcement into something more conversational, a trait that's highly appreciated by the dedicated community they are addressing.
That's a good point.
It subtly implies, look, we know where our success is centered, and frankly, we've sold so many units that splitting hairs over the precise platform distribution point. The point is the volume, driven primarily by Steam's unmatched.
Now let's pivot to the mechanics of it. The platform itself brings powerful, essential context, regardless of the exact percent. Achieving 40 million units on Steam means effectively leveraging, or at least benefiting passively from, an extensive infrastructure that is nearly unique in the digital distribution space. Steam provides specific technical and market tools that help products reach these huge huge number.
Absolutely. We need to dissect those. First is just global digital selling 40 million copies means processing sales in dozens of currencies, adhering to countless regulatory and tax environments, and ensuring reliable, instantaneous digital delivery across continents, and often in regions with widely varying internet quality. Steam takes on that immense logistical burden.
Right.
Second, localized price. Steam's ability to offer highly localized pricing that's tailored to specific world economies, where the purchasing power parity of a dollar is drastically different, that is a huge factor in reaching for. A flat USD price would immediately shut out millions of potential customers in emerging markets.
That localized pricing mechanism is so critical, it's often overlooked. It allows the developer to monetize price-sensitive segments of the market that they simply couldn't touch if they relied solely on the US or the European price tag. It's a strategic tool for driving velocity in low-income regions, where perhaps you need 5 or 10 localized sales to match the revenue of one Western sale, but the total volume of those localized sales ultimately pushes the unit count exponentially.
And we cannot overlook the predictable structure of the platform's sale event.
The big one.
The big one. The predictable structure of the winter, summer, and specific thematic sales provides developers with guaranteed spikes in velocity. Many of those 40 million units likely came during periods where the product was heavily discounted, tapping into the huge global population of users who wait specifically for those promotional. It allows the developer to strategically manage the price elasticity of demand over the product's life.
So it's a machine designed for bulk sale. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of trust, 40 million units sold on a single digital storefront speaks volumes about the trust that massive customer base places in that platform. Trust for purchasing and for delivering the product.
This is a hidden force multiplier. When a consumer buys a digital product on Steam, they are implicitly trusting the platform's security, its fair refund policies, and its long-term viability as a library. This trust facilitates these colossal sales figures. Users aren't hesitant about the transaction mechanism itself.
No, it's just a click.
If the developer tried to handle 40 million sales entirely through their own proprietary launcher and storefront, they would have had to spend astronomical amounts of capital just proving their security and reliability to that.
And that trust also translates into dramatically reduced customer support overhead for the developer. If the download stalls or the payment bounces or the game file is corrupted, the customer's full port of call is almost always the Steam platform's support system, not the developer's specific support email. This outsourcing of core e-commerce trust and logistical risk is a huge hidden benefit that fuels massive scale. The platform takes on the role of the reliable middleman.
And maybe more importantly, Steam takes on the legal and tax burden.
Oof, yeah.
Imagine the regulatory complexity of managing 40 million transactions across the globe. We are talking about complying with VAT regulations in Europe, specific tax laws in dozens of individual countries, data privacy regulations like GDPR, and various regional financial reporting standards. The developer, by selling through Steam, essentially outsources all of that immense legal and accounting complexity. This frees up the developer's team to focus purely on creating the product, rather than becoming an expert in international e-commerce compliance.
That is massive. You're basically saying that the 40 million unit success isn't just a technical achievement in delivery.
No.
But it's a legal and administrative relief that prevents the development team from drowning in international bureaucracy. That concentration of demand makes Steam the inevitable powerhouse for achieving this kind of scale.
It highlights the unparalleled size and reach of the Steam user base itself. No other single ecosystem has demonstrated the capacity to pool hundreds of millions of active, ready-to-buy users into one place, and then facilitate the sale of 40 million units of a single product. The platform, in essence, acts as the amplification link. The developer created the content, sure, but Steam provided the world's largest, fully compliant, and globally localized speaker. It ensured that the product reached those 40 million sets of eyes and facilitated the transaction seamlessly. That partnership is inseparable from the success.
It's the infrastructure that makes the miracle repeatable. Okay, so we've thoroughly analyzed the staggering number and the powerful platform. Now let's dive into the third critical component, the human element, the part the creators chose to spot. The source is explicitly titled, "A Community Thank You." And that use of community over generic terms like customers or purchasers is deliberate, it's meaningful, and it's highly strategic. It implies an active, invested user base, not just passive consumers.
The terminology just fundamentally shifts the relationship dynamic. Customer implies a singular transactional exchange, money for product. Community implies belonging, shared identity, and mutual investment.
Right.
This includes not just the buyers, but the players who stream their experience, who write comprehensive, multi-hundred-hour reviews, who develop game-expending mods, who provide detailed feedback on forums, and participate in organized events. They are They're active contributors to the product's ongoing value proposition and its discoverability.
And this is so vital when we connect the community back to the 40 million. We have to ask, how much of that monumental sales volume was driven by organic word of mouth and community endorsement rather than traditional costly marketing spend? The public thank you strongly suggests the former was highly influential, perhaps even the dominant driver of growth, especially in the long tail.
You have to consider the concept of unpaid labor value.
Unpaid labor.
Yeah. Every user who writes a positive, detailed review on Steam, every user who creates a helpful wiki page, every player who spends time troubleshooting technical issues for another new player on a forum, they are performing labor that the developer would otherwise have to pay for. This unpaid labor reduces the need for official documentation, it minimizes customer support inquiries, and it serves as highly credible, authentic marketing.
So the thank you isn't just good manners. It's an acknowledgement of a massive, quantifiable return on investment.
Exactly.
The community is generating value that translates directly into lower operating costs and higher sales conversion rate. They are essentially an uncontracted global marketing and QA department.
And word of mouth, when it's positive and sustained, is the most powerful marketing tool, especially for a product that achieves that every one of those 40 million units sold represents a positive recommendation. One person buys it, loves it, tells 5 friends, 3 of whom buy it, and so on and so on. The cumulative effect of 40 million satisfied users acting as sales is far more powerful and credible than any paid advertisement the company could possibly.
I wonder, though, how much of this public thank you is genuine gratitude and how much is just sophisticated public relations. Is the company just recognizing the reality of their success, or are they actively trying to deepen the engagement for future benefit?
It's both, and that combination is absolutely essential. A public thank you like this establishes a strong social contract. It acknowledges that continued success, specifically hitting this 40 million milestone, is inextricably reliant on the happiness and engagement of the user base. This is far more than just good manners. It's an acknowledgement of economic dependence. The developer understands that if the community feels valued, they will continue to advocate for the product, and that will drive the next 10 million units. It's a strategic investment in future behavior.
And this approach, it focuses intensely on retention and goodwill, which are absolutely essential for long-term support. A happy community defends the product during the inevitable dry spells between updates. They remain loyal when bugs appear, and they ensure those subsequent sales driven by recommendations stay high. Goodwill acts as a kind of financial resilience. If the community feels they are invested stakeholders, they are far less likely to abandon the product en masse during a crisis.
It also manages expectations by shifting the narrative. By celebrating the community, the company subtly reinforces the idea that the product is a shared project. It shifts the focus from a demanding "what is the company giving me next" to a collaborative "look what we together have achieved."
That's smart.
This shared sense of accomplishment deepens the emotional investment of the user, making them feel like stakeholders in the product's history and its future evolution. It leverages that collective identity.
So what does this all mean for the future direction of the product? A thank you for 40 million units implies an expectation for future interaction and milestone. It's not a final farewell.
No.
It's a mid-journey celebration that just resets the bar. It's an implicit promise of continued engagement and support for the community that fueled this success.
Precisely. The community now knows that 40 million is too big a number to abandon. The thank you acts as a celebratory marker, but it is simultaneously a forward-looking statement about shared investment in the product. It assures the community that the resources generated by those 40 million sales will be reinvested back into the experience, not simply extract. If they had just announced the number without the community acknowledgement, it might signal that the focus was shifting title. The dedication to the community indicates the pipeline for this product remains full.
It sets the stage for the next milestone. 40 million is a huge number.
Right.
But the community is now waiting, not just for new content, but for the company to deliver on the implicit promise of continued excellence that the thank you just solidified. The momentum is maintained by publicly recognizing the engines of that growth, the users themselves. That level of scale changes the developer's identity. They're no longer just the product creator. They're the steward of a massive ongoing cultural phenomenon.
And that stewardship requires a completely different management style. It requires listening, transparency, and a continuous feedback loop that ensures the community feels heard, even as the product. Managing a community of 40 million active users is a monumental organization, perhaps the largest one yet implied by this announcement. So let's try to synthesize the 3 core components of this deceptively simple yet incredibly rich announcement. First, the staggering scale of 40 million. This number is not just a commercial success, it's an economic guarantee. It ensures the product's longevity and sustained development resources. It implies a globally accessible, evergreen operational enterprise built for continuous motion.
Second, the powerful amplification effect of the Steam platform that, I guess, qualifier. It just reinforces the platform's unparalleled dominance as a transaction handler, a trust provider, and, crucially, a legal and tax-compliant shield. Achieving this scale is functionally impossible without the extensive global infrastructure and the concentrated ready-to-buy user base that Steam provides.
And third, the absolutely essential role of the engaged community in driving these figures. 40 million units is a statistic derived from successful transactions, but the cause of those transactions is the highly invested, active community. They act as the primary engine for organic, long-term growth and advocacy. It's a success story driven by network effects and the leveraging of unpaid user labor.
So we took a moment of celebration and we broke it down into its constituent parts of global commerce, platform strategy, and sophisticated human interaction. The ultimate lesson here for you, the learner, is that monumental sales figures are often less about the core brilliance of the product itself, though that is a prerequisite.
Of course.
And far more about the network effect, the operational excellence, and the enabling digital infrastructure supporting it. The product might be excellent, but it requires the right digital soil, Steam, and the most dedicated gardeners, community, to reach such heights of proliferation.
Indeed. It forces us to appreciate the hidden costs and the hidden benefits that lie behind a single metric. We see the 40 million sales number, but we don't see the millions of hours of voluntary labor. The review writing, the mod creating, the forum troubling, the stream, all the things that went into convincing 40 million users to click that purchase button. The true value created is in the human connection to sale.
So as you reflect on this massive achievement and the ecosystem required to sustain it, here is a provocative closing question for you to consider. If a new user only engages with the product because of community-created resource, watching a stream, reading a wiki, installing a mod, what percentage of the transaction value should conceptually be attributed to the user base rather than the developer? What volume of user interaction, the forum posts, the reviews, the hours played, would be required mathematically to translate into the final tally of 40 million sales? Consider the hidden engine of enthusiasm required to move a product on this scale and what that tells us about the true currency of this.